Did you know that the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 had just 512 megabytes of RAM? Despite those limitations, developers still managed to pack their games with hidden details that still hold up today. So in this video, we're taking a look back at some of the most impressive hidden details from that very era, starting with Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2. Now, a big selling point of the Force Unleashed games was the ability to wield the Force as a quote-unquote bad guy. And everyone knows that bad guys have more fun. And what can be more fun than your very own human ragdoll? You see, grabbing people and holding them midair with your powers always looked cool. But if you take your new plaything and lead him close to another enemy, this will happen.
Roger that! There's Daddy!
So, in a desperate attempt to survive, the Stormtrooper grabs onto his buddy, who then joins him for the ride, which is both hilarious to watch, but probably terrifying to experience. Now, something that I loved about the PS3 and 360 era was that even the worst games still had redeeming qualities. Well, I say redeeming qualities, I'm not sure this next detail counts, but well, you'll see what I mean. The Walking Dead Survival Instincts sees you playing as Daryl Dixon. And for those of you who don't know Daryl, he's the one that uses a crossbow and looks like he needs a good bath. I mean, to be fair, the game is set in Georgia, which I've reliably been informed is hot and very humid, which probably explains this next detail. When sprinting for long enough, this will happen. So sweat will pour from Daryl's head into his eyes, which is pretty clever. Now, apparently there is a gameplay reason for this, as the zombies supposedly smell your sweat, but I'm not entirely sure that's true. Still, for a game as underwhelming as Survival Instincts, this is really cool. Now, the whole point of the Hitman series is that you need to improvise. Thinking on your feet is an important skill in the world of bar-coded assassins, and that means you might need to grab the closest thing to hand to deal with a problem. I mean, sure, you could just whip out your silver ballers and go to town, but that's not very Hitman of you, is it? Now, one of the makeshift items that you can use in a pinch is a fire extinguisher, and as you can see, this is definitely a fire extinguisher. Well, take a good look at it, because after you use it to cave someone's head in, it will change. So the once pristine fire extinguisher now has a dent in it, and is covered in blood. Remember, this game is running on a console with just 512 megabytes of RAM. It's a detail that has always impressed me, and given the limitations of the time, only makes it even cooler. Now, something that I love is continuity. You know, when a bullet is fired in a cutscene and then you take control of that character or gun and there's a bullet missing. Usually the gun is fired and then you're in control a few seconds later. But something that's even better is setting up a detail that observant players can notice a whole 5 years later. In 2006's Gears of War 1, after meeting up with Coltrane, Dom and Marcus will have this conversation.
Hey Marcus, remember? Division playoffs? 40-yard line?
I remember you owe me $20.
Oh yeah? See me after the war.
So Dom owes Marcus $20, which Dom promises he'll sort out after the war. Most players will then forget about that conversation, but apparently the developers didn't. And when exploring Marcus's quarters in Gears of War 3, you can find the $20 that Dom promised. I love this detail because what could have been a throwaway line of dialogue in the first game of a series ended up being something referenced 5 years later. Now, I know that we live in a time where new indie games are dropping almost daily, and of course a lot of these games are brilliant. But back in the 360 and PS3 era, there were games that would release exclusively onto Xbox Arcade or the PSN store. This was before indie games became the success they are today, and typically these games were shorter, more B-movie type experiences, and the prices reflected that. And I Am Alive is one of those games. I Am Alive is an action-adventure survival game with an emphasis on climbing and stamina management. Of course, with survival being such a big deal, it's important that you manage your resources effectively, and usually it's better to conserve ammunition rather than shoot at enemies. I mean, even if you do have to raise your gun, the person on the other end of the barrel doesn't know if it's loaded or not, which can lead to some pretty cool moments.
Hello? We don't like being surprised by out-of-town guests.
scumbag!
Hey, wait, no! I'm not worth the bullet! Don't shoot! I'll do whatever you say. Please, please! That's an empty gun. You made a big mistake.
So, after taking up the first two guys with John Wick-style efficiency, the remaining enemy begs for his life, without knowing that the gun is actually empty. When you try to fire the weapon, and the enemy hears the telltale click from the empty gun, he immediately charges at you, which I think is brilliant. Now, that's not all. If you're really serious about preserving your bullets, you can even do this.
I'm not worth the bullet!
Back off.
Okay, okay. Shit, I'm blocked. Please, please!
Now, don't get me wrong, I Am Alive isn't a great game, but even the worst games of that era still did some things really, really well. So games used to release at an incredible pace. Fallout 3 arrived in 2008 and New Vegas hit store shelves just 2 years later. Fast forward to today and we've gone years without a brand new single player Fallout. Thankfully, those older games are still packed with things that most players have never seen. For example, during the I Could Make You Care quest, you can speak to a homeless man who doesn't make a lot of sense.
Huh? Ooh.
I mean, what can I say? I did say he doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, maybe that's because you're not on his level, you know, IQ-wise. And if you speak to the man whilst having very low intelligence yourself, this will happen.
Friend, not a few minutes ago I chanced upon a pair of destitute orphans grappling over just such an item. If you cover the area methodically, I'm quite certain you'll happen upon them with only the most insubstantial of delays. Be well, and do try and avoid the tragic path of the sot that led me to my present infirmities and spiritual woes.
So the bumbling homeless man is now an articulate gentleman who gives you the information that you need. I mean, does this make the 11-year gap between now and the last proper Fallout game any better? No, but it is very funny. Speaking of games that are long overdue a sequel, next up is Batman Arkham City. Now, I know that we got Arkham Knight in 2015 and Arkham Shadows in 2024, which despite being a VR game is brilliant, but going 11 years without a proper Batman game is crazy. Hey, at least we got the Suicide Squad game though, right?
What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
Anyway, much like Fallout, you can go back and play the Arkham games if you're craving some Batman action, which gives you a chance to see this next detail for yourself. Early on in Arkham City, you bump into Two-Face, who has captured Catwoman and is threatening to give her an acid bath. Of course, time is of the essence, but before you rush in and save the damsel in distress, take a look at the courtroom that Two-Face calls home. So, one side of the courtroom is very clean and tidy, whilst the other side is, well, not clean and tidy. Of course, Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face, is obsessed with symmetry, and the courtroom is just another example of that. I've completed Arkham City more times than I can count, but it wasn't until the third or fourth playthrough that I noticed this, and honestly, it blew my mind. Now, one of the Fear series' biggest selling points was its AI, which would attempt flanks, flush you out of cover with grenades, and push you when you were low on ammo. I know that sounds like standard stuff today, but it really wasn't back then. They would also call out your location, which usually meant that you'd need to get a move on, and fast. But there is one location in particular that is guaranteed to make you laugh. In one of the levels, you need to make your way through an elementary school, which is in the middle of a school production, and if you take cover behind a certain prop, the enemies will say this.
There! He's behind the ass! The ass! He's behind the ass!
So, because you're hiding behind a donkey, the enemies will comically say, he's behind the ass. I mean, I know I said this was guaranteed to make you laugh, and that may have been a bit of an exaggeration, but if it didn't at least make you smile, even just a little bit, then I don't think you're human. Now, most games today are very keen to desexualize its characters, so that they can stand on their own merits and not be gooner bait. Well, I did say most games. Anyway, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up to you, but the reason that I'm annoyed by it is because it means we're seeing this next detail less and less. In the 2012 action-adventure game Lollipop Chainsaw, you play as a high school cheerleader named Juliet, who uses a chainsaw to kill zombies. And I don't want to sound like an old man yelling at the clouds here, but they sure don't make games like this anymore. Well, apart from the remake, but that doesn't count. Now, because Juliet is a high school cheerleader, she isn't dressed in what I would call appropriate zombie killing attire. And if you try to get a closer look at her outfit, she will do this. So, aware of your dubious glances, Juliet will actively cover herself up to avoid your gaze. Given that similar details were completely removed in the Resident Evil 4 remake, this is definitely the product of a bygone era. So the final level of Halo 3 is a mad dash across a crumbling Halo installation where one wrong turn could mean death. With that in mind, you would probably think that you have no time to stop and chat to a lonely grunt, and in almost every other situation, you would be right. As you approach the end of the level, you can find a lonely grunt, and if you speak to him, he will tell you exactly what he thinks.
Hey, Demon! The jerk store called, and they're all out of you! Poor you! Stolen at the age of 6 and conscripted into the military! Okay, look, you let me live. I got the fist up front. Look, I'll be the bottom. I'll polish your boots. I'll polish your helmet. It's the gas! When I'm on the gas, I don't know what I'm doing half the time.
It's honestly incredible what developers manage to squeeze into games running on just 512 megabytes of RAM, and by today's standards, ancient CPUs. If you enjoyed this trip back to one of gaming's greatest generations, leaving a like really helps the channel, and if you want more hidden details every single week, make sure you're subscribed.